Boom, what's up everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host Alan Sakyan. Super excited to be talking about hacking the American mind, sugar, processed food, lack of sleep, drugs, technology, the attention economy. There are so many variables that are going into this, and we have the man, Dr. Robert Lustig, with us.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
I really appreciate you coming onto the show.
You bet.
Super pumped. Robert Lustig is a pediatric endocrinologist. He is a professor emeritus at UCSF. He is also the author of Hacking the American Mind. The link's in the bio, go and check it out. His website, links in the bio, his Twitter's in the bio. You can go and check him out in more detail. Chief Science Officer at Eat Real. There is so much going on our planet today, and I'm excited to talk about this with you because you actually had a viral video, Sugar, the Bitter Truth.
8 million.
8 million,
I
yeah.
do not understand.
Yeah, I do understand.
I don't.
It's profound. It's profound. Everyone should check out Robert's video on, it was UCSF TV hosted the video.
UCTV, right.
UCTV.
Back in 2009, and for reasons that are unclear to me, people keep watching it.
Because
we have more data now. I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots more to know than what was there, 9 years ago.
I think one of the things that you said in there that just people didn't really get was the amount of sugar that we drink.
Not just drink, eat too.
And eat.
I mean, drink is bad.
Bad.
Drink is bad. That's 37% of our added sugar consumption. But in fact, most of it is in foods you didn't know had it. 49% of your added sugar consumption is in foods you didn't know had sugar, like tomato sauce, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, hamburger buns, hamburger meat. That is enormous. So even if you got rid of soda, which I think would be a good idea, even if you got rid of soda, we'd still be double above our limit in terms of our ability to metabolize it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, even getting rid of soda, we would still have so much added sugar in all these other foods. You also had this crazy, so now you've had, you went on and you did another video recently about a year ago on when you published the book, and you, then you started breaking down how much money the food companies make and how much it costs us for healthcare for all of these diseases, these metabolic processes that are cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes,
fatty liver disease, cancer, dementia, absolutely. So the point is, we have all of these diseases, and we have a healthcare crisis, and we have a social security crisis. If you look at how much money the food industry makes selling us this crap, and you look at the amount of money we spend taking care of the diseases that they caused, cleaning up their crap, we spend triple what they make. That is unsustainable. Yeah. And it's the reason that Medicare and Social Security are both going broke. And I'll be very honest with you, I'm gonna be 72 in the year 2026, and I want my friggin' Medicare. And you should too. And it won't be there for me, and it won't be there for you, and it won't be there for your entire audience unless we solve this problem. People think, oh, there's a pill for that. Like there's an app for that, there's a pill for that. There is no pill for this. So there are pills that treat individual symptoms of the problem. So you can take statins for high LDL. You can take antihypertensives for high blood pressure. You can take metformin for insulin resistance. You can take different pills for different symptoms, but you cannot reverse the metabolic problem underneath. And until you do, you're going to die just the same. You cannot fix healthcare until you fix health. You can't fix health until you fix diet, and you can't fix diet until you know what the hell is wrong. And we, for the last 50 years, have been told one thing, and it turns out it's the exact opposite.
the health and diet to be fixed, it also, this not only has to come from oneself with exercise and understanding the truth about reality and the truth about healthy eating, but also this has to do with the business plans and the economic models of the food companies addicting us to processed foods, to sugars, and then this also has to do with our habits with technology as well.
Right.
And if we can free our communities from those overwhelming economic pressures and forces that drive the attention economy, that drive processed food addiction, and if we can come back to the cooking, your 4 C's.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll do all of those.
We'll do all of those.
We'll do all of those. Point I make in the book is that we currently today have 4 separate public crises. We have a healthcare crisis, we have a social security crisis, we have an addiction crisis, we have a depression crisis. The point that I try to make in the book is that these are actually 4 manifestations of the same crisis that no one's talking about, that belies all of these others, and these are not separate phenomena, but in fact all downstream of something much bigger.
They overlap on a
They all overlap.
diagram, and
Absolutely.
Is that the pleasure? That's the pleasure.
Right there in the center, right. And that crisis is the inability of our society to differentiate these 2 positive emotions, pleasure and happiness. Now, they're both positive emotions. They both feel good. Why should we care? So first let's define them, so people know what we're talking about. The short definition of pleasure is, this feels good, I want more. The definition of happiness is, this feels good, I don't want or need anymore. The difference between reward and contentment, pleasure and happiness.
And as you even went into dopamine and serotonin.
Well, we're going there, right?
Yeah.
So there are actually 7 different phenomena, 7 different distinctions between these 2 words, pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is short-lived, happiness is long-lived. Pleasure is visceral, you feel it in your body. Happiness is ethereal, you feel it above the neck. Pleasure is taking, happiness is giving. Pleasure is experienced alone, happiness is usually experienced in social groups. Pleasure can be achieved with substances. Happiness cannot be achieved with substances. The extremes of pleasure, whether it be substances or behaviors, so substances like cocaine, heroin, nicotine, alcohol, sugar, or behaviors, shopping, gambling, social media, video gaming, pornography. In the extreme, every single one of those leads to addiction. Yeah. There's an aholic after every one of those. Shopaholic, sexaholic, chocoholic, alcoholic, etc. But there's no such thing as being addicted to too much happiness. Yeah. And finally, pleasure is dopamine, happiness is serotonin.
A contentment-holic, a zenaholic.
You try that.
When I'm at those 10-day meditation retreats,
yeah.
It's a holic to what could potentially be the most profound feeling that humans can achieve. And it's very interesting how all of these holics that you list, all of the pleasure-seeking things in the world, they also, first of all, the way they hit the endocrine system, which is crazy interesting, which you've been studying for decades.
Yep.
That's crazy because the endocrine system hormonally brings us to homeostasis.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah. And so then there's that, and then there's also not only the way that our bodies and our endocrine systems work with the pleasures, but also the way that the economics of these processed food companies and the gambling and the shopping and the attention economics all roll into this. It is a crisis of first principles that we have to teach our kids moving forward.
Well, indeed. The fact of the matter is, this is not by accident. This entire 50-year, buy this and you'll be happy mode that we are all in right now didn't come about out of a vacuum. Okay? This was planned, this was orchestrated with Congress's help and the Supreme Court's decisions. There is a very clear, not just paper trail, but in fact legal trail that has led us to this, what I would consider precipice that we currently find ourselves, just about to fling ourselves over into the abyss.
The money that's being slid under the table for those causes that are causing the cancer in our society is bullshit for the greediness of certain individuals. Ron, can we go to let's go to marketing versus propaganda here would be really good.
Sure.
We have that slide and you can tell us the difference.
Sure. So we now know the difference between pleasure and happiness, at least cursorily. We have many examples of it. The second question that we have to answer is, what is the difference between marketing and propaganda? A lot of people would say nothing. There's a very distinct difference between the two. Marketing is using information to espouse your point of view.
True information.
Information. Propaganda is using disinformation to espouse your point of view. So the difference is the truth. But there's a commonality between both of them. Dopamine. Both of them generate a dopamine response.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? And that's exactly what propagandists do to hook you. They very specifically play on this neuroscientific flaw that you can't distinguish marketing from propaganda.
And if you can't distinguish between pleasure and happiness on top of that, then we're screwed,
And here we are.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So you put those two together and you get a toxic mix of angst, misery, and avarice that the world has never seen.
You gave us these numbers as well. I'm so happy that you were one of the panelists at our social media and attention economy event. 3 times increase in youth suicides in the United States. 4.4% of people across the world have been diagnosed with depression. And what was the rate in the US? Was it 15% or something?
Here we have, it's an 18.5% increase in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And triple in children in terms of outpatient visits with suicidal ideation.
Wow.
So when you think about the number of people on antidepressants, it's enormous. And I'll give you a perfectly rational explanation for what's going on in the world today. We have 7 states that have legalized marijuana, California being one of them. Why? Why now? Very simple. Marijuana is an anti-anxiety agent. So is Prozac. So what we've done is we've traded an under-the-counter, prescription medication that you couldn't control for an over-the-counter medication that you can control. But ultimately, the alleviation of anxiety is at the root of both of these. And as marijuana sales have gone up, antidepressant, SSRI prescriptions have gone down proportionately in all 7 states.
Similar to when we had Steve D'Angelo on the show, one of the world's leading cannabis activists, alcohol sales have went down, abuse and violence have went down. People have been able to work out their disputes better amongst families, and these things are leading to be good in many ways. At least we have something that is going right.
Look, I'm not here to say that marijuana is a good idea, bad idea. That's not my issue. Ultimately, alleviation of anxiety is a very good idea. The question is, where's the anxiety coming from?
From the first principles,
You always have to work upstream. You cannot solve problems downstream. Okay? You have to find the problem.
Yeah.
Okay? Like I say in the book, you find a wasp in your attic. Are you going to kill the wasp, or are you going to find the wasp nest?
Nest, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a really good way to put it. Ron, can you pull up that graphic that has all the brands on it, the conglomeration of brands? Yeah, this is fucking ridiculous. Yeah.
Now, I will make one alteration. This slide is about 3 years old right now, and I want to actually do a call out to Procter & Gamble. They have divested themselves of processed food.
Oh, they did. That was one of the ones that I saw on here I was thinking there is some good that comes from. It's like, nice, I get laundry detergent that works decently well, and that's not.
I'm not saying that P&G gets off scot-free, but they stopped making Pringles.
They stopped making Pringles?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they sold it off. Somebody else makes them now.
Interesting.
And interesting, Nestle sold its confectionery business here in the United States to Ferrero Rocher for $2.8 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the bad news is that Nestle is increasing sales of all of its CPG goods around the world, particularly in the poorest sections of Brazil.
CPG, consumer packaged goods.
Right.
And particularly of what? Do you know which goods? That
candy? Everything with sugar in it.
With sugar in it, yeah.
So the fact is, a lot of companies know they've got a problem. They see the writing on the wall, and they're trying to do something without actually admitting fault. Because if they admit fault, then the lawsuits come.
That whole BS that happened with the taking fat-free foods instead of going, that was such a crappy tangent away from what's actually important.
Well, in fact, we know, because we have the paper trail, that they knew what they were doing. They made a conscious decision, the food industry made a conscious decision back in the mid-60s that, number one, they could deal with this heart disease issue by subverting the whole sugar heart disease question and bringing up the LDL fat question. Number two, they could launch an entire new line of fat-free products, which expanded their reach, and they could argue that you could eat whatever you wanted, and all of that was propaganda. Every single thing, because they knew, and we know they knew, because my colleagues at UCSF, Kristen Carnes, Laura Schmidt, and Stan Glantz, found the paper trail. And we now, at UCSF, have the Food Industry Documents Archive. 300,000 pages of food industry email, documents, etc., that basically tell us what the food industry was thinking. Just like we have the tobacco documents archive, we now have the food documents archive. And your entire listenership and viewership should go online, idl.ucsf.edu, and you can look it up yourself. And you can actually do your own research and publish your own papers using the tobacco and the food industry's own words.
And we've seen this now happen with the tobacco industry, where there was a massive amount of propaganda that was pushed out, even though they knew the truth that nicotine was addicting. And they continued putting other crappy chemicals inside of those freedom sticks, even fucking worse. And then there's the process of revealing that crap, and that has been going on, and then finally now it's not in restaurants, it's not in planes, it's not in etc. So the kids can't market it towards kids. Well, when are you going to be able to not market Snickers bars and Coca-Colas towards kids? What is this open happiness campaign that is, if it was open pleasure, that would be funny because it'd be true.
It would be true, but it's not. That's not what they're marketing. We've got open happiness, we got happy meal, we got happy hour, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, they want you to think you can buy happiness. And it is true, you can buy pleasure, you can buy dopamine. no question there.
Yeah.
But you cannot buy happiness. And what we've learned is because of the relationship in the brain between dopamine and serotonin, because of how the neuroscience of these two neuronal systems work, and because of the overlay of a third neural system, the stress, fear, memory, cortisol pathway, and how it works to actually up your dopamine and down your serotonin, basically, the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you get. And that's what we're seeing. And this explains how we can have a simultaneous addiction crisis and depression crisis. Because we have a pleasure crisis.
And the pleasure is going both towards the addictions as well as the depressions.
Well, the increased dopamine is leading to a decreased serotonin and serotonin receptor, thereby reducing serotonin signal transduction and making people anxious and miserable. And now you've got a marijuana explosion instead. All of these things actually tie to the same basic precepts. And as long as you don't understand the problem, you are subservient to it.
Yeah, yeah. This is a whole education for children. I hope that the sort of grassroots things that we're seeing, you know, Dr. Bronner's, they're like all is one, or all are one, and they make a bunch of different things, including things like dish soaps and body soaps, and their materials are completely sustainable and biodegradable and whatnot. Anyway, there's a big push for different food companies to have, you know, 1 or 2 ingredients in their food, or the soaps to have 1 or 2 ingredients in the soaps.
Well, indeed, the closer we can get to real food, the better off we will all be. And if you only have 1 or 2 ingredients, then the chances are it's closer to real food.
Yeah.
Processed food tends to have many, many ingredients. You know, there's an old saying, if the number of ingredients on the package is 5 or greater, you know, don't buy it. Because that means it's ultra processed. And we now have the data that shows that ultra processed food is the driver of metabolic syndrome and of cancer. And we're starting to collect the data that says that it's also the driver of dementia.
Yeah, that's crazy, because dementia is now becoming, it's ranking with cancer as the absolute horrific things that are taking humans down. And so...
And it actually costs more.
It costs more.
Dementia costs more than cancer.
And people are unable to have happy times with their families and their friends, and even just, So it's horrific. And if when we swim upstream and we see the corruption of the food systems and the corruption of the technology systems and the corruption of everything that's coming down with pleasure, and we give a big fat middle finger up to those pleasure systems, and we build from the grassroots, we build the humane techs, ethical design systems, that we build the food systems that are only 1 or 2 ingredients, and we propagate those around the world, that will be a good way to lead by example for children, therefore finally coming to a damn solution with this.
Well, let's talk about children here for a minute. Children are particularly vulnerable. Now, we know they're vulnerable. The question is, why are they vulnerable? And when are they vulnerable? If you look at childhood and adolescence, there is more mental health prevalence during those years than there is at any other time, whether it be impulsivity disorders, whether it be depression, whether it be schizophrenia. You add it up, the years of late prepubertal and puberty are hotbeds of mental health disorders. And the question is why? And the answer is this area of the brain right here.
Prefrontal cortex.
Right behind your forehead. It's called the prefrontal cortex. It is the part of your brain that makes you human. It is the part of your brain that no other species on the planet has. It is the part of your brain that is the most developed. But because it's the last part of the brain to have developed evolutionarily, it is also the last part of the brain to develop ontogenically in any one given person.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't develop your prefrontal cortex until puberty begins, and you don't finish developing it until puberty is over, about age 25. In that period, from say 12 to 25, you are laying down myelin,
mm-hmm.
the fatty sheath that basically coats all neurons. And that myelinization does not finish until age 25. And it is because your prefrontal cortex is so rudimentary, so primitive, and so susceptible to damage during those years that all of these diseases are so prevalent. It's also why insurance companies jack up the rates on adolescents and young adults, is because they all think they're immortal. It's why the armed forces recruit 18-year-olds, because they think they're immortal. After age 25, people realize, oh my God, you know, what did I do? So this is a particularly vulnerable time because of this process of myelinization. Now, I'm going to give you a way to think about this. You have a battery, and you have two wires. One wire is bare, and the other one has a plastic insulation over it. And the battery is a strong battery. And you put the bare wire over it, and you put the insulated wire over it. Which of those two wires is going to short out first?
The one without the conductivity?
The one without the insulation.
The insulation.
The bare wire.
Yeah.
Okay. So it turns out dopamine, this excitatory neurotransmitter, it excites the next neuron.
Yeah.
Okay? Neurons like to be excited, that's why they have receptors, but neurons like to be tickled, not bludgeoned.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic overstimulation of any neuron will lead to neuronal cell death. Now, if that neuron happens to be myelinated, it's a lot harder to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
But bare neurons, unmyelinated neurons, they're easy to kill. And guess what? That prefrontal cortex, all through adolescence, it's unmyelinated. It's easy to kill. And so there are a lot of toxins. There are a lot of drugs, including, by the way, marijuana, which kill that neuron. So the question is, what happens if you kill your prefrontal cortex while you're an adolescent? Ain't good.
Yeah, if you fall susceptible from these years of 12 to 25 as your neural architecture is forming, and you get manipulated through these pleasure-seeking systems for food or for processed foods, sugars, technology addictions,
lack of sleep.
Lack of sleeps. The stat you had was that eighth graders that had their phones in their charging in their bedrooms slept 28 minutes less. This is what you were describing a couple minutes ago. This each nerve cells, they like to be excited. A lot of your myelin sheath here gets formed in your adolescent years,
right?
And that nerves like to be excited, and that's awesome because neurotransmitters get to communicate between areas of the brain. But when you get so addicted to pleasure, you were teaching us that the neurons actually in order to, as a defense mechanism, it turns off its excitatory abilities through other neuronal
networks. What it does.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, please.
So neurons like to be excited, but they don't like to die. They don't want to die. So what they have is they have a plan B. They have a self-defense mechanism. Chronic overstimulation of any neuron will lead to neuronal cell death, but there's a plan B. What they do is they downregulate the number of receptors so that there's less likelihood that any given dopamine molecule will find a dopamine receptor to bind to, thereby reducing the gain, reducing the amplitude.
We're talking right here.
Right, exactly, on those dendrites.
Yep.
Right there. And so, what does that mean in human terms? It means you get a hit, you get a rush, receptors go down, next time you need a bigger hit to get the same rush, because there are fewer receptors and the receptors go down, and then you need a bigger hit and a bigger hit and a bigger hit, until finally you need a huge hit to get nothing. That phenomenon is called tolerance.
Yeah.
And then when the neurons actually do start to die, which will happen in the chronic overstimulation state, particularly in the bare wire state, when those neurons start to die, that's called addiction. And that's why teenagers are most susceptible to addiction. So, the more pleasure they seek, the more unhappy they get. And the problem is, once those neurons are dead, they ain't coming back, because central nervous system neurons don't reproduce. So you're basically at low ebb for the rest of your life.
We can't rely
so we have to prevent this.
We can't rely on a neurogenesis of sorts for...
There are specific areas of the brain that have neurogenesis. The
Like
nucleus
hippocampus,
accumbens,
right?
like the hippocampus, as long as your cortisol levels are low.
Interesting.
Yeah, if your cortisol levels are high, forget about it.
Forget about it? Yeah,
Yep.
that's interesting.
Okay, and also the olfactory system has neurogenesis. But the number of areas of the brain that have reproducing neurons are extraordinarily few and far between. And the reward system is not one of them.
Interesting.
So the goal is to protect your reward system so you can experience pleasure.
Yeah.
Problem is, the more pleasure you look for, the less you'll be able to experience later. And we're not allowing our children any semblance of figuring this out for themselves, because we're handing them an iPad at age 12 months.
Yeah, yeah. Babysitter, as you called it.
The portable babysitter.
And then when you get all these, as a pediatric endocrinologist, when you go and you see these kids that you're dealing with in the clinics, the kids are coming in with a deteriorated sense of imagination.
Indeed. So Piaget, famous child psychologist of the 20th century, famously said, play is the work of the child.
Yep.
That's the child's job. I add to that, boredom is the opportunity of the child.
Yep.
There's no play without boredom, because that's how the child decides to work. That gives the child an impetus to do so.
Yeah.
If you take that away by handing them a screen, you're actually inhibiting their ability to create. You're inhibiting their imagination. And not only that, but they will never figure out how to self-soothe. They will never figure out how to be alone. Sherry Turkle, famous media watcher at MIT, coined the famous phrase, if we don't teach our children how to be alone, they will always be lonely. Mm-hmm. And guess what? When you're lonely,
You go for pleasure-seeking
you
behaviors.
sure do. We have an entire generation of lonely people.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're told by Facebook, oh, well, we'll connect you. Oh, no, you won't. Facebook is not connection. Facebook is connectivity without connection. You cannot have connection with anonymous. Doesn't exist. And the reason is because connection, like you and I are doing right now, is eye to eye, face to face, which does not occur at a digital keyboard. Why does that matter? Why do you and I have to have eye to eye in order to have connection? Because we have a set of neurons in the back of our head, in the occipital lobe. Mm-hmm. They're called mirror neurons. You can record from them. They're their own distinct entity. And what they're doing...
When you walk down the street and see someone smiling, you tend to
smile back. Yeah. What those neurons are doing is they are reading the facial expression of the person you are talking to in real time.
Yep.
So as you're sitting there,
Yep.
with this, satisfied look on your face,
inclusive.
I'm reading that,
Yeah.
okay, and you're watching me be quite vehement.
And we're emotionally
Maybe
connecting.
we
and
are.
It feels really good. It feels like
Indeed.
the souls are dancing.
Right.
And it feels amazing. And you can't get this from the comment section.
No, and you certainly can't get it from the anonymous section.
Yeah.
So I'm reading your facial expressions in real time, and I am translating your emotion into my own. And that has a name. It's called empathy.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it, you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
So we're not allowing kids to be empathic.
Yeah.
We're basically making them do their homework on an iPad. They used to get together in groups. Now they get together in groups on the internet so they can sit in their own room rather than across the table from each other. We are actually inhibiting their growth.
Wow.
This is not okay.
Wow, it's so, Ron, go ahead. Yeah, you come in. Yeah, you have
I
some
just
thoughts?
have my friend Susan is watching. She thinks you're an amazing person there, Doc, and she's
Awesome.
commenting on the
Shout out to
video.
Susan.
Yeah, Susan Rooker from Maine. She's watching. And
Thanks for watching, Susan.
Shapoopy.
Shout out to people that can tap into what Rob is here saying. So let's come back to this thought as when you're speaking about this, I'm feeling you. I'm looking at your eyes. I'm seeing your eyebrows and your lips, the way you smile, the wrinkles, the
wrinkles, yeah.
Hey, look at my ring. We all
How to
have.
win friends and influence people.
More wrinkles.
You look fantastic, by the way, Doc. When you said you were 72 years old, I'm like, oh my God.
He'll be 72 in 2026.
29.
Wow.
29.
If I could be so lucky.
Yeah, 29.
And yeah, it definitely looks good. But so every single one of these nuances to a facial expression, it's a moment-to-moment processing. Just like the computer is processing moment-to-moment what you are asking it to do, I am processing moment-to-moment someone's expressions. The better we can get at understanding different emotional states and connecting with people on the deepest emotional bases, the stronger we will have our humane ties to each other.
Indeed. So let me give you two thoughts on this. Paul Ekman, famous psychologist from UC Berkeley, went to Papua New Guinea many, many years ago. Never seen a white person. They had the exact same facial expressions for the same emotions that we did.
Yeah.
They didn't know us.
Yeah.
But happiness, same facial emotion, frowning, meant the same thing no matter where you went on the planet.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary
Baked
development.
in.
Yeah,
Well,
baked
because it preceded language.
preceded language, that's right.
Preceded language.
That's right, thank you, Ron. Yeah. Literally preceding language. We could go.
We could still communicate.
Pre-grunts and moans, and we were still eye-to-eye facial expressions.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that exists. The problem is we're destroying it. Number two. What was number two? I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah. Can you cut that? Number two, religion. Religion's a great microcosm for this whole issue. So there are 4,200 religions on the planet.
4,200.
4,200.
Whoa.
So why are there 4,200?
Because the number 42 is awesome.
I'm not sure if that's why. Yeah. Because of Jackie Robinson? Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, there are 4,200 religions on the planet. They all share one thing in common: a meeting place.
For face-to-face interaction.
Correct.
Interesting.
Where you worship together.
Together, yeah.
Okay, there's no religion without some place together. Now,
interesting.
Once the pastor or the rabbi or the imam or whoever it is, opens their mouth, okay, that's dopamine. Okay, but that meeting place, that's serotonin. Okay, that's
the ethereal feeling that you get when you're there with so many other people celebrating something that is spiritually transcends humans.
Indeed. Okay, and it's also contributing to something larger than yourself, which is also a method for generating serotonin. Yeah. So there are 4 methods that I know of that up your serotonin, tamp down your dopamine, lower your cortisol.
Called the 4 C's.
Called the 4 C's. And they're clinically proven to work, evidence-based, and your money back guarantee. But since none of them cost anything, forget about the refund.
That's right. That's right.
They're all free. And they're all things your mother told you.
Yeah.
Okay, but we forgot.
Grandmother taught the mothers hundreds of thousands of years ago.
And we have forgotten it in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
All 4 of them. First, connect, like we've talked about. Number 2, contribute to something bigger than yourself. Yeah. So contributing to your IRA is not contributing. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah. Passing along small amounts of microfinancing to artists and entrepreneurs and people around the world, contributing through going out and spending a day just helping people that need the assistance and help. That creates sense of empathy, connection between people. Yeah.
Volunteerism, altruism, philanthropy, all you listening out there, okay? That's contribution. Third, cope. Now, cope is...
Coping not with pleasure.
Not with pleasure,
yeah.
No. Coping against pleasure,
yes.
if anything.
Yes.
It's the opposite. 3 things: sleep, mindfulness, exercise.
Those are great.
Now, sleep is going away. 35% of Americans get less than 7 hours of sleep per night, and 23% are clinical insomniacs.
Damn.
And what that does is it fries your prefrontal cortex. And what that does is it allows reward and dopamine to go great guns, puts your serotonin in the sewer, and your cortisol goes haywire.
You aware of Matt Walker's Why We Sleep?
Yeah.
Because it's a whole information integration process from the previous day that you have to go through the period of sleep. I can't believe it. 35% are getting less than 7 hours?
Yes.
It's because we're getting jammed down our throats this notion of needing to do everything possible to make some sort of the impacting the world has now become pleasure seeking, that I need the watches and I need the cars and I need the houses and I need the girls and the boys and the people. That's so dumb. That's going to run us into the ground.
So I'm going to tell you that there are actually 2 phenomena going on underneath there. One, fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. So you stay up. And the other is the blue light.
The blue light phenomenon.
The blue light phenomenon.
Inhibiting melatonin.
Exactly. And that's why kids who sleep with their cell phones in their rooms get 28 minutes less per night. Not because they're on them, but because of the blue light.
Yeah.
So
the 4th C.
The 4th C is cook.
Yep.
So there are 3 items, 3 nutrients, if you will, that play a role in this pleasure happiness story.
The more you cook, the less you can be taken advantage of by the corruption of the food systems.
Well, of course, because you're making real food.
Yeah.
So there are 3 items. One is tryptophan. Tryptophan is the precursor of serotonin. It is the rarest amino acid on the planet.
Interesting.
Okay, you usually find it in eggs, poultry, fish.
Interesting, tryptophan.
Those are not exactly processed food. Mm-hmm. Number 2, omega-3 fatty acids.
You have to get healthy. This is very important. You have to get like cage-free chickens or
they have higher tryptophan. Yes,
they have higher tryptophan
and lower branched chain amino acids, which actually contribute to dopamine. So
interesting.
Indeed, okay. And also metabolic syndrome. So omega-3 fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory and increase serotonin neurotransmission, and finally fructose, the sweet molecule in sugar, which ups your dopamine and downs your serotonin. So what you want is a high tryptophan, high omega-3, low fructose diet.
Yeah.
That's called real food.
And you can supplement omega-3 quite easily.
If you buy the right stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of omega-3s that are actually omega-3, omega-6 combinations.
And that's not good.
Not as good.
You want just omega-3.
Just omega-3s. And that gets expensive, so you have to look at the label to know that whether it, and the easiest way to know is whether it's farm-raised fish oil or wild fish oil.
You want wild.
You want wild.
Not farm-raised.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that costs more.
That costs more. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cook. And cooking will get you build empathy, build relationships between families.
So cooking a meal for yourself, your family, friends, you get connection, you get contribution, you get coping, because cooking is mindful. You got to actually pay attention, okay? And finally, the cooking itself. So
shout out to Michael Pollan for pushing cooking as well.
Absolutely.
Humanity wanting to get more people to cook.
And everything Michael said, I agree with except for one. He said 7 famous words: eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
And you disagree with the last part?
I think I can say it better in 3 words. Eat real food.
Eat real food.
Because the not too much will take care of itself, because real food has fiber.
And you get full.
And you get full, and also you're feeding your bacteria. Right?
Microbiome.
Right. So he'd say mostly plants, that'll get you there too.
Yeah.
What I think is that the not too much and the mostly plants take care of itself if you're eating real food. Now, there are a whole bunch of people who do not believe in the vegan diet, which is the mostly plants. This whole, whole food plant-based business.
There are some people that are only carnivorous. Yeah.
I don't care.
As long as it's real, is your point.
Correct.
Real. Yeah.
Correct.
That way the carnivores can live with the grain mines and the planties. Yeah.
I don't care if you're a vegan or you're a ketogenic. I don't care. I really don't care.
Yeah. Just eat real food. Yeah.
What do they have in common? They would seem to be completely, diametrically opposite. And the answer is, they have 2 things in common.
Low fructose.
Low sugar, high fiber.
High fiber, yeah.
Low sugar,
because
high fiber.
When you, this has now become more and more of a famous example, but when you down a soda, it goes directly into, there's no fiber. There's no fiber. It goes, the sugar is
Lots of sugar and no fiber.
But then when you eat a handful of almonds, there's a lot of fiber, and so then it's slow release into your body.
I'll even give you fruit.
Apple.
So I mean, fruit has sugar.
There's fiber,
but the fiber content of an apple is enormous.
Exactly.
And so when you consume the sugar with the fiber, called an apple, what you're doing is you're setting up a gel on the inside of your intestine, the soluble and insoluble fiber. The insoluble fiber forms a lattice work of the gel, kind of like the hair catcher on your bathtub drain.
Yeah.
And then the soluble fiber, globular fiber, plugs the holes in that lattice work, and you form an impenetrable barrier. You form a secondary barrier on the inside of your duodenum, reducing the rate of absorption, thus keeping your liver healthy so you don't get metabolic syndrome. And because you didn't absorb it early, it gets transferred further down the intestine to the jejunum where the bacteria are, and then the bacteria chew it up for their purposes, so you're feeding your bacteria. So even though you consumed it, even though it passed your lips, it didn't pass your intestine. Therefore, you ate it, but you didn't get it. But your bacteria did. So you improved your gut health and you improved your liver health by preventing the tsunami of all of these macronutrients hitting your liver all at once. You solve both problems at once with real food. And it doesn't matter. All the other stuff is window dressing, whether it's, straight vegetables or whether it's, meat containing or not. So that's where the 2 factions have to basically understand that they can peacefully coexist with the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. What they can't coexist with is processed food.
Yeah. That's Rob, this is so fascinating, and I would love for the conversation to continue onward. And actually, we'd love to have you back on the show in 2019 and early in the year, and we can start talking about these topics in even more depth, but also just building out the first principles frameworks for adults and for their children. Something as simple as the complete ban of sugary soft drinks.
That'd be a start.
And like you said, getting the adequate amount of sleep, getting exercise in, not having the phones around at late times in the night, cooking more at home. These solutions that you've been listing have been just so simple, and we just gotta make them habits.
Well, they're not simple. They're not simple at all. Look at technology. Technology is simple, but fixing it to be useful and a tool rather than an entertainment is not simple.
Yeah.
And that's where Tristan Harris and Roger McNamee and the Center for Humane Technology come in. We need developers to agree and adhere to first principles. First, do no harm. Okay? The fact of the matter is, I'm a physician. I had to take an oath. First, do no harm. Developers, first, do no harm. And right now, you're doing a whole bunch of harm.
Yeah, that's a very profound statement, because if the developers that are building out the bioengineering and neuroengineering and artificial intelligence engineering systems that we don't have a solid platform of ethicists and philosophers that are co-working with them, that we're going to have some serious geopolitical pressures that occur.
Already have. You saw what happened in 2016.
The election, yeah.
And that's understandable.
Because it's propaganda and it's influence.
It's the dopamine response curve.
Yeah.
It's a U-shaped curve. It's a bell-shaped curve.
It's a bell curve.
Bell-shaped curve. It's not a straight up and down curve. It's a bell-shaped curve. If you're to the left of optimal, you're lethargic. If you're to the right of optimal, you're irritable. What the Russians did was they took all the lethargic people and made them irritable by upping their dopamine. They'll do it again.
In a way to be robust and even just being not being fragile to that, being anti-fragile to the manipulation of propaganda, is to find more zen, find more nuance. Don't be focused so much on these consumptive, emotive echo chambers of crap that we see so much of.
Right.
Yeah.
Be alone.
Be alone.
Don't be lonely.
Don't be lonely. Yeah. Yeah. Knowing how to be alone, Rob, so important. We've been talking about that a lot with meditation and, like you said, mindfulness, and there's so much pleasure seeking that occurs when we are when we don't know how to be alone.
That's right.
Yeah. I feel so much more awakened, and I hope you guys do too. I wanna just ask you just a couple quick questions that we like asking on the show. Do you think that we're alone in the cosmos?
I think we will find out we are not alone, but I don't think we're going to find it out soon.
Okay. And then, do you think we're in a simulation?
I think some people are in a simulation.
Well, why do you?
I don't think I am, except that I'm on simulation right now. But I think that my life has had enormous meaning.
Yeah.
And I know that the day I die, I won't wonder what the hell I did with it. If you don't know what the hell you did with it, then you're in a simulation.
That was so good. So to paraphrase, if you have found meaning in your day-to-day journey in life, you are not in a simulation. But if you haven't found meaning in your life until your deathbed, you are for sure in a simulation. That's pretty.
Indeed.
That's pretty interesting, Robert.
There's a YouTube internet cartoon. It's about 5 minutes long, and everyone should watch it. It's called Happiness. Look it up.
Which one is it? How long is it? Do you know?
It's about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
It's called Happiness, and it's the rat race. And it's wonderful.
Oh, I think I may
It was
have
cut
seen
from about
a short film
2
by
years
Steve
ago.
Cutts.
That sounds right, yes. Short film by Steve Cutts, that's the one. It's brilliant.
Interesting.
Absolutely. If you've never seen it, it's absolutely
The
brilliant.
Scramblers presents.
Absolutely brilliant.
So you guys can watch this. I just wanted to at least pull it up. This one. Yeah, this one's so good.
The best.
It's
So brilliant.
So brilliant. So there's 7.7 billion people now on the planet. Crazy stat that it took 200,000 years to get 1 billion people, and now over the last 200 years we've gotten 6.5 billion more.
Right.
We have a lot of work to do to make sure that we can't have the propaganda come in and take advantage of people, and finding meaning in life through society is so damn important. And we can talk about that more next time. We have so much to talk about. Yeah.
We should schedule another session to talk about the tragedy of the commons.
Yeah.
Because that's what we have.
Yeah. If you're not thinking differently, then Copernicus is one of my favorites, and this is. You will fall into the masses, and the masses don't know the truth. Truth comes from the process of finding something meaningful in your life and pursuing that. And usually, if you follow against the commons, you can find something as a free thinker that is really impactful for the world.
No one can tell you the truth.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah.
You have to figure the truth out
You have to
for
figure
yourself.
the truth out for yourself. You can for sure have better parents and better community and better friends around you to help make it easier for you to find
That's true.
the truth.
I agree with that.
Because if you live in a place that has the corrupt greed and the tentacles of corruption, it'll be much more difficult. But okay, and then last question is, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Whoa. Oh. My kids,
Why do you say that?
because they are. Because they're me.
And here comes the ego.
Here goes the ego, yeah, Robert.
You're not yours. That's life longing for itself. What are you talking about, Doc? Hey, let's shout out to Kai Fost, who's been watching.
Shout out to Kai Fost.
Commenting.
Kai was
Susan
also at
Rooker.
the Social Media and Attention Economy event. Shout out to Kai. Thanks for the support. Much love for you. Thanks for commenting as well. And anyone else to shout out, Ron?
Susan Rooker.
Yeah, we shouted out Susan.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I am blessed to know you, and we are blessed to have
pleasure.
you. And
Vice versa.
I thank you, and I love how, like you said at the end of the show, that you know that when you pass, you know that, like, damn, I lived it. I knew what I needed to do, and I did that. That's so cool. Yeah. If we can have more children birthed into the world knowing that, find that meaning and do it, and you will have no regrets.
Yep.
I love it.
That's it.
Rob Lustig, such a pleasure. Thank you
Pleasure,
so much for
Alan.
coming onto the show.
My pleasure.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let us know what you thought. Also, go and check out Rob's links below. The Hacking of the American Mind, his recent book. Also, follow Rob on Twitter. Also, go and build the future. Go manifest your destiny into the world, everyone. Much love to you. Much love to Ron for producing and directing. We will see you soon. Peace.